Chapter 1. Against All Expectations. The summer sun cast long shadows across the immaculate gardens of Thornfield Hall as Duchess Helena Blackwood strolled along the gravelled paths, ostensibly admiring the roses, but in truth seeking a glimpse of the stables beyond the eastern hedge. Her lady's maid, Margaret, followed at a respectful distance, undoubtedly aware of her mistress's true intentions, but tactfully pretending otherwise. At 26, the Duchess of Thornfield was considered one of England's great beauties, with her honey-gold hair, clear blue eyes, and the kind of porcelain complexion that society women envied. She had been married at 17 to the Duke of Thornfield, a man 30 years her senior, in an arrangement that satisfied her family's ambitions and secured the Duke's succession. Though the union had not produced an heir before the Duke's passing 3 years ago, Helena had fulfilled her duties as Duchess impeccably, managing the vast estate with a competence that surprised the Duke's advisers. What no one expected, least of all Helena herself, was that widowhood would finally allow her to discover love in the most inappropriate of places. "Your Grace?" Margaret's gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. "Perhaps we should return to the house. The afternoon grows late, and Lord and Lady Huxley are expected for dinner." Helena sighed. The Huxleys were just the latest in a parade of suitable company that her brother, Lord Whitmore, insisted on sending to Thornfield, eligible bachelors and their matchmaking mothers, all hoping that the wealthy young Duchess would choose to remarry. None of them stirred even the slightest interest in her heart. "A few minutes more, Margaret," she replied. "The gardens are so lovely this time of year." As if choreographed by fate itself, a figure emerged from the stables at that moment, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. Even at this distance, Helena could recognize the confident stride of Daniel Cooper, Thornfield's head groom. Though only 30, Daniel had earned his position through exceptional skill with horses and an innate understanding of the complex operations that kept the Duke's prized stables running smoothly. Her heart quickened as he looked up, shielding his eyes against the sun, and spotted her. For a moment, he stood perfectly still, then offered a bow that was proper in form, yet somehow conveyed a warmth that protocol could never permit. "Your Grace," he called, his voice carrying across the garden. "Phoenix has been exercised as you requested. Would you care to inspect him?" It was an innocent enough question, one that any stable master might ask of the estate's owner, yet they both knew it for what it was. An invitation, a chance to speak without the weight of dozens of watchful eyes. "Yes, I believe I would," Helena replied, keeping her voice measured despite the flutter in her chest. "Margaret, you may return to the house and inform Mrs. Winters that I shall be in shortly to prepare for dinner." The maid's expression revealed nothing, though Helena suspected she understood more than she let on. "Very well, Your Grace," she said with a curtsy before turning toward the house. Helena waited until Margaret was well out of sight before making her way to the stables, her steps quickening despite her efforts to maintain a dignified pace. The sweet scent of fresh hay and the quiet nickering of horses greeted her as she entered the cool, shadowed interior. Daniel stood waiting by the stall of her favorite mount, a magnificent chestnut stallion named Phoenix. When he saw her enter, his face transformed with a smile that never failed to take her breath away, open, genuine, without the careful calculation she had grown accustomed to seeing in the expressions of those who approached her. "Helena," he said softly, dropping all formality now that they were alone. "Daniel." His name on her lips felt like freedom itself. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, drinking in the sight like parched travelers finding water in a desert. Then, with a quick glance to ensure they were truly alone, Daniel stepped forward and took her hands in his, rough, calloused palms against her smooth skin. "I've missed you," he said. 3 days is too long." "My brother's visitors," she explained, the regret evident in her voice. "He's determined to see me remarried before the year is out. Lord Pendleton stayed until yesterday, followed immediately by the Huxleys." Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Though he never complained, Helena knew how difficult it must be for him to hear of the parade of suitors visiting Thornfield, men who could openly court her, who society deemed worthy of her hand. "And did any of them impress the Duchess?" he asked, his light tone belied by the intensity in his grey eyes. Helena squeezed his hands. "You know better than to ask that. Their relationship had begun innocently enough, 7 months earlier. After years of having her riding restricted to sedate, proper outings on gentle mares, Helena had expressed a desire to truly learn horsemanship during her mourning period, when social obligations were few. Daniel had been assigned as her instructor, and in those early morning rides across the Thornfield estate, a friendship had formed that neither expected. He treated her not as the untouchable Duchess of Thornfield, but as a person with thoughts and feelings of her own. She, in turn, discovered in him not just a skilled horseman, but a man of intelligence and principle, who had educated himself far beyond what his station might suggest. Their conversations ranged from literature to philosophy, from the management of the estate to their hopes and dreams. When friendship blossomed into deeper feelings, both had tried to deny it. Helena knew what society expected of her. If she remarried, it would be to someone of her own class, preferably with a title to match or exceed her late husband's. Daniel, for his part, was acutely aware of the impossibility of their situation, of the scandal it would create, and the damage it could do to Helena's reputation. Yet here they were, meeting in secret, cherishing stolen moments that had to suffice, in place of the life they could never share openly. "You should go," Daniel said reluctantly, though he made no move to release her hands. "The Huxleys will be arriving soon. Let them wait," Helena replied with uncharacteristic defiance. "I see so little of you as it is." A shadow crossed his face. "Helena, we can't continue like this forever. These secrets, these stolen moments, you deserve more." She knew what he was saying, what he had hinted at before, that she should forget him, should find happiness with someone who could stand beside her in the light of day, not just in the shadows of the stables. "I deserve to choose my own happiness," she countered, stepping closer until mere inches separated them. "And I choose you, Daniel. I have since the moment you taught me that a lady can gallop astride and still maintain her dignity." The memory brought a smile to his lips. "You were magnificent that day, hair coming loose, cheeks flushed with excitement. I think that's when I first knew I was in trouble." "Trouble? Am I?" She arched an eyebrow playfully, "the very best kind." His voice lowered as he leaned in, his free hand coming up to gently cup her cheek. The kiss was brief but tender, a reminder of what they shared despite all that stood between them. When they parted, Helena saw in Daniel's eyes the same conflict she felt in her heart, joy in their connection, fear of discovery, and the ever-present knowledge that society would never accept them as equals. A noise from outside, the crunch of gravel beneath carriage wheels, broke the moment. The Huxleys had arrived early. "Go," Daniel said, releasing her hands and stepping back. "Your guests are here." Helena nodded, composing herself with the practiced ease of someone long accustomed to hiding her true feelings. "Will you exercise? Artemis tomorrow morning? I should like to ride at dawn, if the weather permits." It was their code, established months ago, a way to arrange their next meeting without raising suspicions. "Of course, Your Grace," he replied, slipping back into the formality expected of a servant addressing his mistress. "She'll be ready at first light." As Helena made her way back to the house, adjusting her bonnet and smoothing her skirts, she steeled herself for the evening ahead. More polite conversation, more subtle hints about suitable matches, more carefully phrased inquiries about whether she intended to remain in mourning indefinitely. None of them, not her brother, not the Huxleys, not the entirety of London society, could possibly understand that her heart now belonged to a man who had never set foot in a ballroom, who owned no lands and boasted no title, but who had shown her more kindness and genuine affection than she had known in her entire life before him. "He is beneath you, Duchess," her brother had once remarked upon noticing her speaking with Daniel. A moment too long after a ride. The contempt in his voice had stung her deeply, though she had masked her reaction with a practiced smile. Beneath her, as if worth could be measured by accidents of birth rather than the content of one's character. As if the genuine connection she shared with Daniel was somehow less valuable than the calculated attentions of men who saw her primarily as the wealthy Duchess of Thornfield, a prize to be won. As she approached the main entrance, where the Huxleys' carriage had just arrived, Helena took a deep breath and assumed the serene expression expected of her position. For now, she would play her part, the gracious hostess, the proper widow considering a return to society. But in her mind, she was already counting the hours until dawn, when she could be simply Helena, a woman in love with a man who saw her for who she truly was. What she could not know then was that forces were already in motion that would soon make it impossible to maintain the careful balance between her two worlds, and that would force her to choose, once and for all, between the life society had planned for her and the love that had awakened her heart. The dawn came with a gentle mist rising from the fields surrounding Thornfield Hall. Helena had slept poorly, her mind filled with the contradictions of her situation. The Huxleys' visit had been predictably tedious. Lord Huxley had spent much of the evening dropping hints about his unmarried nephew, a viscount with extensive properties in Kent, while Lady Huxley had remarked at least 3 times that widowhood, while respectable, was such a waste for one so young and beautiful. Now, as Helena made her way to the stables in her riding habit, a sense of anticipation displaced her lingering fatigue. These early morning rides with Daniel were the only times she felt truly herself, not the Duchess of Thornfield, with all its attendant responsibilities, but simply a woman enjoying the freedom of a gallop across open countryside with the man she loved. Daniel was waiting with their horses already saddled, Artemis, her spirited grey mare, and Thunder, his own powerful black gelding. His face brightened. When he saw her, that unguarded moment of joy, making her heart leap before he composed himself into the more proper demeanour of a servant greeting his mistress. "Good morning, Your Grace," he said, loud enough to be heard by the stable boy who was sweeping the yard nearby. "Artemis is eager for a run today." "As am I, Cooper," she replied with equal formality, accepting his assistance as she mounted. His hands on her waist lingered a moment longer than strictly necessary, a small intimacy that sent warmth through her despite the morning chill. They rode in companionable silence until they reached the boundaries of the Thornfield estate, where a stretch of woodland provided privacy from curious eyes. Only then did Daniel relax, his formal posture softening as he turned to Helena with a smile that transformed his handsome face. "You look tired," he observed gently. "The Huxleys kept you up late?" Helena sighed. "They meant well, I suppose. Lady Huxley lost her first husband young and remarried within a year. She cannot fathom why I haven't done the same." "And what did you tell her?" Daniel asked, his tone light, though she could sense the tension beneath it. "That I find Thornfield keeps me quite busy enough without adding the management of a husband to my duties," Helena replied with a wry smile. "Though I didn't mention that my heart is already spoken for." Daniel's expression grew serious. "Helena, we need to talk about what happens next, for both of us." She reined Artemis to a stop in a small clearing, the morning sun filtering through the leaves overhead. "What do you mean?" He dismounted and came to help her down, his strong hands encircling her waist. When her feet touched the ground, He didn't step away as propriety would dictate, but kept his hands on her waist, looking down at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I've been offered a position," he said, "in America. A wealthy landowner in Virginia is establishing a breeding program for racehorses and wants someone with experience to manage it." Helena felt as though the ground beneath her had suddenly shifted. "America? But that's thousands of miles away." "It is," he acknowledged, "and it would mean leaving everything I know. But it would also mean a fresh start, a place where my worth would be judged by my skill and character, not by my birth." "When would you leave?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The ship sails in 3 weeks. 3 weeks." The words echoed in Helena's mind like a death knell. 3 weeks until she would lose him forever. "I see," she said, fighting to maintain her composure. "It sounds like a wonderful opportunity. You must be excited." Daniel's hands tightened slightly on her waist. "Helena, look at me." She raised her eyes to his, unable to hide the pain she felt. "I want you to come with me," he said. For a moment she thought she had misheard. "What?" "Come with me to America," he repeated, his voice gaining strength. "We could marry before we leave. Start a new life together, where no one knows or cares that you were a duchess and I was your groom." The boldness of the proposal left her speechless. In all their conversations, through all their stolen moments, they had never openly acknowledged the impossibility of their situation or discussed a future together. It had been an unspoken agreement between them to cherish what they had for as long as they could, without reaching for what seemed unreachable. "You can't be serious," she finally managed. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life," Daniel replied, his grey eyes steady on hers. "I love you, Helena. I've loved you since that first morning when you insisted on learning to saddle your own horse, even though any other lady would have considered it beneath her." Her heart soared at his words, even as her mind raced with the implications of what he was suggesting. Leave England, abandon Thornfield and all it represented. The scandal would be enormous. Her family would likely disown her. She would lose her position, her fortune, the respect of society, and yet, "I love you too," she said softly, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating as they left her lips. "But what you're asking—" "I'm asking you to choose happiness," he interrupted. "Your husband has been gone for 3 years. You've fulfilled every obligation society could reasonably expect. Don't you deserve a life of your own choosing now?" Before she could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats silenced them both. Daniel stepped away from her quickly, assuming the proper distance between servant and mistress just as a rider came into view through the trees. Helena's heart sank as she recognized her brother, Lord Richard Whitmore, astride his distinctive chestnut stallion. His face, normally composed into aristocratic hauteur, was flushed with anger. "Helena!" he called out as he approached, his gaze shifting between her and Daniel with obvious suspicion. "What is the meaning of this? I've been searching everywhere for you." "Good morning, Richard," she replied, keeping her voice steady through sheer force of will. "I'm simply enjoying my morning ride, as I do most days." Alone with a groom, in a secluded clearing. His tone dripped with contempt. "Have you taken leave of your senses? What would people say if they knew?" "Cooper is Thornfield's head groom, and has been instructing me in horsemanship for some time," Helena said, grateful that years of navigating society had taught her to maintain a calm facade regardless of her inner turmoil. "There is nothing improper about it." Richard dismounted, his movements sharp with anger. "Nothing improper? Then perhaps you can explain why Mrs. Winters observed you leaving the stables yesterday looking rather flushed after spending nearly half an hour alone with this man." He jabbed a finger in Daniel's direction without deigning to look at him directly, so the housekeeper had noticed and reported to Richard. Helena felt a chill run through her at the realization that they had been less discreet than she'd thought. "I was checking on Phoenix," she said. "He had been unwell earlier in the week." "Spare me your excuses," Richard snapped. "I'm not a fool. Helena, though you seem determined to act like one." He turned to Daniel, finally acknowledging his presence. "You're dismissed. Pack your things and be off the Thornfield estate by nightfall." Daniel's expression remained carefully neutral, but Helena could see the muscle working in his jaw. "With respect, my lord, only the Duchess has the authority to dismiss me from my position." Richard's face darkened further. "You dare to correct me, boy? I am Lord Whitmore, and my sister is under my protection." "I am not under anyone's protection." "Richard," Helena interjected, her own anger rising to match her brother's. "I am the Duchess of Thornfield and mistress of this estate. You have no authority here. And you think I will stand by while you disgrace yourself with a stable hand?" Richard's voice rose dangerously. "Think of our family name, of your position. He is beneath you, Helena. A nobody who likely sees you as nothing more than a path to fortune and comfort." Daniel stepped forward then, his composure slipping just enough to reveal the fury beneath. "I have never sought anything from her grace beyond what she has freely given, my lord, and while you may consider me beneath her by accident of birth, I would never dishonor her as you are doing now with these accusations." For a moment, Helena thought Richard might strike Daniel. Instead, her brother turned to her with cold determination. "You have a choice to make, sister. End whatever this association is immediately, or I will ensure that every door in London society is closed to you. The scandal will be enormous, but I will weather it rather than see our family name dragged through the mud by your foolishness." The threat hung in the air between them. Helena looked from her brother's rigid face to Daniel's carefully controlled one, and something shifted within her. All her life, she had done what was expected of her, married where her family directed, maintained the perfect Duchess's composure, accepted the limitations of her position without complaint. But now, faced with losing the one person who had shown her what true happiness could be, she found a well of courage she hadn't known she possessed. "There will be no scandal, Richard," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Because I will be leaving England." Both men stared at her in shock. "What nonsense is this?" Richard demanded. Helena moved to stand beside Daniel, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Mr. Cooper has been offered a position in America. I intend to accompany him there, as his wife." Daniel's sharp intake of breath was the only indication of his surprise, but when she glanced at him, the wonder and love in his eyes gave her the strength to continue. "You're mad," Richard whispered, genuinely shocked for perhaps the first time in his meticulously controlled life. "You would give up everything, your title, your fortune, your position in society, for this groom." "I would," Helena confirmed, the certainty of it filling her with unexpected peace. "And I will have lost nothing of true value while gaining everything that matters." "I won't allow it," Richard said, recovering his composure. "I'll have him arrested before I let him ruin you like this." "On what charge?" Helena challenged. "No law has been broken. I am a widow of sound mind, free to make my own choices. The estate is mine to manage until a male heir comes of age. And as there is no heir, that means it remains mine entirely." "You cannot mean to throw yourself away like this," her brother persisted, his voice now tinged with desperation rather than anger. "Think of Mother, of what this would do to her. Think of our family name that has stood respected for generations." Helena felt a pang of regret at the mention of their mother, who had always been kind if somewhat distant. But not even that was enough to shake her resolve. "I have thought of nothing but family duty for my entire life, Richard. I married a man 30 years my senior because it was advantageous for our family. I managed his estate after his death. With perfect propriety, I have earned the right to choose my own happiness now." Richard looked between them, his expression hardening once more. "So be it. But know this. If you go through with this madness, you are no sister of mine. Your name will never be spoken in our home again." The words hurt more than Helena had expected, but she nodded acceptance. "I understand." With a last look of disgust, Richard mounted his horse and wheeled it around, galloping back toward Thornfield Hall without another word. In the silence that followed, Helena turned to Daniel, suddenly uncertain. "I hope you meant what you said about wanting me to come with you. I seem to have just burned my bridges rather thoroughly." Daniel's face broke into a smile of such joy that it banished all her doubts. "I meant every word," he said, taking her hands in his. "But Helena, are you certain? What your brother said about losing everything—" "What do I lose, truly?" she interrupted. "A title that has brought me more constraint than joy, money that I've never been allowed to use as I wished, a society that values me for my husband's name rather than myself." She squeezed his hands. "What I gain is so much greater, a chance to live honestly, to love openly, to build something that is truly ours." Daniel pulled her to him then, propriety, forgotten as he kissed her with a passion that left no doubt of his feelings. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "3 weeks," he said. "We'll need to move quickly. There's a small cottage on the edge of the Thornfield estate that belongs to my uncle. We can stay there until—" "The ship sails away from your brother's interference." Helena nodded, her mind already racing with practical considerations. She would need to liquidate some assets, prepare documents transferring management of Thornfield to her solicitors, pack only what was truly necessary. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked, noticing her distraction. "That I have a great deal to do before we leave," she replied, "and that I've never felt more alive than I do at this moment." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Welcome to the beginning of our story, Helena. Not the Duchess of Thornfield and her groom, but simply a man and a woman who chose each other above all else." As they mounted their horses to return to Thornfield, one last time as mistress and servant, before they would leave as equals bound for a new life, Helena felt a lightness in her heart that had been absent for as long as she could remember. "He is beneath you, Duchess," they had said. But they had been wrong. Daniel Cooper had never been beneath her. Society, with all its rigid hierarchies and meaningless distinctions, had simply been too blind to see the true worth of the man she loved. In America, they would build a life measured not by titles or bloodlines, but by the strength of their bond and the courage of their choices. It would not be easy. She harbored no illusions about that. But it would be real and true and theirs. And that, Helena thought as they rode side by side through the morning mist, was worth everything she was leaving behind.